Hello, and welcome to D-SETI. Today, I am going to present a presentation I am practicing for my PhD studies at the California Institute for Human Sciences. This presentation is a scholarly presentation, meaning that it uses a very specific type and tone of language, as well as it bases the statements in research. Now, this is a student presentation, meaning that it is not peer reviewed and that I will receive feedback from the instructor about where it's at. So without further ado, I want to present the boundary between quadrants. And so let me share my screen here. Wonderful. So the boundaries between quadrants, an integral study of anomalous geometric NHI-associated body marks. Now, this is a very complicated way of saying the marks left on the body or discovered on the body in association with alien abduction or some other interaction with generally understood to be supernatural or paranormal creatures. Now, this is a presentation for the class Foundations of Integral Studies. It would be wise to familiarize yourself with integral studies. I'll describe it briefly, but Ken Wilber is a great place to begin. All right. So the topic of this presentation is the application of integral theory to anomalous geometric marks, body marks, as physical evidence for extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence contact experiences. So this is a very defined subset of a phenomena. The anomalous body mark phenomena is associated with alien abduction, witchcraft, ghost interactions, past life karma, and stigmata. Each of these marks have overlapping yet different characteristics and are oftentimes used as physical evidence for a hypothesis, either that aliens are physically abducting bodies and physically performing medical experiments, or else past lives exist and the marks upon the body are evidence for that. So the free survey, the Foundation for Research into Extraordinary and Extraterrestrial Experiences, which was put together by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Ray Hernandez, and several other researchers, indicates that 642 people, that's half of their survey respondents to that section of the survey, say that they had unexplained scoop marks or puncture marks, which is consistent with other surveys of experiencers. Although they are easily photographed upon discovery, less than a dozen photographs have been published in research. I say it's very interesting that this is the one phenomena that is easily documentable, yet and related to physical evidence with clear intuitions and connections with non-human intelligences, and yet our data set is non-existent. Per se. So my goal here is to establish an integral foundation for the cataloging of body mark documentation and data from public sources such as social media, recorded lectures, and published data sets. I want to scan through the internet, the databases, and pull together photographs and stories and data about this phenomenon. I'm engaged in this work and have been for about a year. There are dozens and dozens of examples with thousands of credible experiencers. All right, so this topic is historic and important. So I've noted that these marks have been used as physical evidence for physical and historic claims that aliens kidnapped an experiencer to perform unwanted medical procedures. This was a common theme in 1990s and early 2000s and 1980 alien abduction research. And it is one that has impacted my life. I had been afraid of looking into more supernatural experiences because I believe that I may have experienced alien abduction or something like this and did not want to face the negativity of that experience that was put forward by alien abduction researchers using body marks as physical evidence. They have no other physical evidence for the encounters that they are talking about. They just have anecdotal witness testimony, generally hypnotic testimony as well. So this is a really huge point, and I was just shocked to see the amount, the little amount of data actually available to support such wide claims, right? So Jacques Vallée in 1998 observed precedents of fairy lore about supernatural body marks, and this was in his book Dimension. I believe that was published earlier, actually, and this citation is for a subsequent edition. And he suggested that these alien abduction marks as physical proof are a much more complex topic. He has a very famous statement saying, how can space travelers be such poor doctors, right? That's a really good question. So I looked into what are the precedents? What are the precedents for these experiences? And I was shocked to find out that there are strong precedents within the witches or devil's mark traditions, right? So I could not find any examples of fairy marks particularly, except in the context of discussion of the witches or devil's mark that is used as physical evidence for witchcraft and has served to condemn and kill witches, right? So this is a very important historical legacy. And when we're using body marks as physical evidence, we have to consider this as a cautionary tale. All right, so they have similarities, right? So witches' marks were thought to be protruding moles through which, or nipples through which imps, devils, and demons, right, or spirits would suckle the lifeblood of the witch through that mark. And generally the imps would show up in the form of fairy or familiars like witches or birds, right? So it involves that kind of phenomenology, right? So, but with the alien abduction, there's typically scoop marks, right? And they are thought to nourish the extraterrestrial civilization through adding genetic diversity or creating alien-human hybrids or something like that. So we can say that these marks actually do serve as nourishment for the NHIs. In addition to that, alien abduction literature often cites screen memories or strange encounters with animals. So aliens show up in the form of birds or other animals behaving strangely. This is familiar with alien abduction literature. So here we see another connection with the witch and their familiars. Interestingly, in the paper that by Dar that surveys the physical evidence, there is indication that the witch hunters would look for these protruding moles or nipples, extraneous nipples, but would also look for a mark that they thought was caused by the devil or the witches pinching off the nipple in an attempt to hide the fact that this sort of interaction is taking place, because they knew the witch hunters were coming. So they'd pinch them off and there would be an indentation, which seems to me to be very similar to the alien abduction scoop mark. In contrast to the physical hypothesis, I hypothesize that some marks may be communications from non-human intelligences that first impact the subtle body and then psychosomatically manifest on the physical body like stigmata. Therefore, integral theory may help guide research at each body level. So we're dealing with internal experiences, subjective, manifesting externally and objectively through psychosomatic mind-body mechanisms. All right, so this is what I'm talking about as physical proof. This is Stan Romanak talking to an ABC News anchor. Stan Romanak has a documentary about him and a lot of documentation. So he had an injury to his knee. He was going to get fixed by a medical doctor. The night before the surgery, he gets abducted and wakes up from that. The brace on his knee is nowhere to be found. It's actually melted in a circle of something outside of his house, and his knee is fixed. And he has these dots in a line along his knee. So this is a mark he's saying is the perhaps side effect of the medical procedure that healed his knees performed by physically bodied aliens or something like that. So he has presented this as proof. This is one of the most famous examples of body marks as physical proof. And yet, when we do a geometric analysis of this mark, we can see that it is highly precise. So we are dealing with the geometric intervals between the dots, as well as the size of the dots, are clearly determined by simple geometric construction, right? So this involves the bisection of a line, the bisection of one of the radii, for the radii of the center circle, the bisection of another, the radii, and on the other side, it's the golden section, and these determine the placement. And then the further division of the line will determine the radius of the dot. So isn't that interesting? Now, they're not perfectly signed up or centered on these lines, and that's another characteristic of this dots in a line body mark phenomenon I have worked with. Here is an example of, I use DuckDuckGo to search for alien abduction body marks, and we see a number of examples. So I need to just talk through some of these. The one on the top center is a circle of dots with 5 dots on top of it. This was presented by Bud Hopkins in a lecture to the MUFON conference, saying, I believe it's 2004, saying this is a mark discovered on the body, sent to him. He doesn't know what it is, what to make of it, but believes it's a result of alien abduction. Right. The mark immediately underneath that is called a crosshair or target symbol mark phenomena. This has been recently presented by Jacques Vallée, who I cite in this history. He presents these as anomalous markings, perhaps associated with extraterrestrials or UFOs, and in fact have found several cases where UFOs have been seen by the same experiencers of this mark. Interestingly, I will point out that both of these marks have been identified, physical causes have been identified to produce marks that are congruent with these marks in terms of impression on the body as well as design. So in the case of the top circular dot mark, these were appeared to have been materially caused by suction covers of jacuzzis or hot tubs pulling in water through a grid of that pattern. The one beneath it appear to be instantaneous burn marks caused by hair dryers, the ends of hair dryers, and somehow people don't notice or remember this. Interestingly, in both cases, investigators have sort of explored this connection, and many experiencers say they actually don't have the hair dryers, don't use hair dryers, or have not been in a jacuzzi. So there is still yet a mystery there. Here's another geometric analysis of, here's the one a geometric analysis. This is my own dots in a line phenomena. I experienced this on summer solstice. I discovered the mark in association with a series of very strange lucid dreams. I see the mark, I understand it's geometric, and I know I will analyze it, but I just don't know how. And I put my photos away. I wait until the same dream characters and the same dream phenomena sort of happens on the winter solstice, and they tell me to use ruler and compass geometry to analyze crop circles, body marks, UAP pulsations, and my own body mark. And this is one of the designs or constructions I've made to describe the intervals and size of the dots. Here's another one, a very similar one. By the way, this is associated with a tall gray, non-human intelligence extraterrestrial, a non-human that presents in those ways, let's say. This one is from an experiencer also having dreams of tall gray extraterrestrials, very similar, yet somewhat divergent marking pattern. Yet here we can see regular geometric themes. And this one actually reminded me so much of the Phoenix lights that I analyzed those, and I discovered a similar geometric pattern within them. And these are images of two different images of the Phoenix lights and two other images of similar UAP formations filmed by Dr. Lynn Kitty. I've analyzed them and put them together and kind of shown how they are a distinct geometric language, or could be. Here is a body mark. This is a red grid mark phenomenon. I'm a moderator of the Facebook group Red Grid Mark Phenomena Experiencers and Researchers. There's thousands of people that appear to experience this. This is a Harvard-trained dermatologist who experienced the mark within weeks of a brain tumor operation, during which she had something like out-of-body or near-death experience. She has worked with me to explore the spiritual dimension of this experience. Now, here is another example of the red grid mark. I will show 3 images briefly to show how much different data or levels of meaning can come off of here. We see sacred geometry, we see golden ratio, we see numbers and measurements. This is an analysis of elements of this mark that are similar to the dots in a line. And you might notice the placement of 2 dots in the top that are determined by the bisection and golden section of one line. Similarly, if you rotate your orientation, you can see that same theme showing up at the bottom left. And finally, here is measurements that can really show, that really do show that this form implies a triangle that's sacred and geometric. So it looks to be a near perfect right triangle. So, and here is the example of the suction cup. Now, this identification of the pattern and the cause was published by the experiential dreaming red grid mark phenomenon dossier. They identified 2 causes of marks, but exhaustively investigated other mark phenomena that still remain a mystery. It's really important to note the connection that the experiencers who performed the investigation were experiencers and attribute many of the causes to perhaps non-human intelligence, interactions in dreams. So this brings us to, finishes the review of the kind of phenomena we're looking at. And now I want to talk about the integral theory foundation of this work. So I say that the body marks span many different dimensions, right? We will talk about, I'll show you that some researchers have pointed out that these body marks have a spiritual dimension as well as a physical dimension, and there are psychosomatic examples of body marks that are somewhat similar. And so in this way, we need to integrate the internal experience and the external experience. And that's why the integral tradition is one of the best to approach this subject matter. My foundation in this comes from my integral education. So at California Institute of Integral Studies, I got a master's degree in East-West psychology. A sage named Aurobindo really influenced the foundation of CIIS, and kind of paraphrase of his philosophy might be that we need to practice integral yoga, meaning work with the evolution from matter to spirit, but also from spirit to matter. So there's two directions, from the divine down and up there. So in this way, we might see this sort of merging interaction that we need to look at spirit and matter. Motoyama is a scientist and a priest, actually, that founded the California Institute for Human Sciences. And the phrase I use to exemplify, or let's say paraphrase this work, is to elucidate the connection between spirit and matter. And so he developed devices to measure the energy bodies of the energy output of certain chakras along meridians and things like that, using scientific methods. And he has designed experiments to correlate those with spiritual observations of the chakras, elucidating this connection of spirit and matter. Most people think of Ken Wilber when they think of integral theory, and he worked within these traditions and created an integral theory. It's sort of a map of the world. It's called AQAL, AQAL, all quadrants, all levels. And so all quadrants mean the quadrants of human knowledge, the quadrants of experience, the internal individual versus the internal collective. That's the personal or collective unconscious or subjective experiences versus the objective quadrants. And he talks about all lines, meaning lines of development, acknowledging that there are multiple different ways of looking at the same thing: physical, spiritual, etc. Now, the integral theory arises from several different themes or streams and is applied in different ways. And I looked to the application of integral theory into integral dreaming, which is a book put out by Bog, Zaron, and Delorier that really helps ground dream work practice into integral theory. And dream work actually is very important in NHI contact. My other research topic is how NHI contact is dreamlike and how our ways of knowing about it may be best modeled as shamanic dream work. Now, Dr. Sean Esborn Hargens, program director of the Integral Noetic Science program here at CIHS, put forward the foundation of a metadisciplinary integral practice of exo studies. So this is a way to look at and study the ontological reality of non-human intelligence, meaning who are they, what are they? And it does so by applying integral theory to this topic. So we'll look to that to inform this work. And finally, integral practices, integral theory recommends integral practice. I mean, it's a holistic inquiry method involving embodied modes of inquiry, spiritual modes of inquiry, and also rational intellectual modes of inquiry. And so it is recommended to engage in a practice that is embodied and psycho-spiritual. And the practice that will support this inquiry is the ruler and compass geometry, especially in line with Platonic and Neoplatonic traditions, meaning that we do Euclidean geometry, but we are also open to the idea that these mathematical objects are apprehended by the geometer or person doing geometry because they remember the world of forms, the spiritual world behind or supportive of this physical world. And so geometry as a practice enables a communication with that realm of truth or transpersonal understanding or whatever that is. It is, if in this world we are talking about phenomena, in that world we are talking about noumena, the opposite of phenomena. And so ruler and compass geometry enables a bridging of the phenomena and the noumena. This is exemplified in the AQAL analysis. So I will just sort of identify, body marks do have many different dimensions, and they span inner, outer, individual, and collective quadrants. So this is the quadrant analysis according to integral theory. And in the individual interior quadrant, the personal subjective quadrant, we might ask, who experienced the mark? What was their experience of finding it? What was the experience with NHIs that caused the intuition of meaning? Over in the individual exterior, the objective quadrant, we might ask questions about the body. What do doctors say? What are the medical precedents? Down in the group exterior quadrant, we might talk about the systems of the objective systems in our world. And so we might go, how is the mark used as physical evidence for historic events, right? What are the precedents for this in literature? In the group interior, the we quadrant that's associated with, let's say, transpersonal or collective unconscious or culture in general, we might ask a question, what's the cultural history of the mark? What are the correspondences with the geometry? And using the Platonic terms, what myths arise during the recollection of the mathematical object when we're apprehending it, doing the analysis of the mark? What are the myths that arise during that recollection? And that may address some of or all of the different aspects of body mark. Now, there are several principles that Ken Wilber put forward in association with the AQAL model, and these are the ones that are very relevant. So the integral aperspectival notion is that we should not unduly privilege any one perspective. And so undue privilege to any one perspective is sometimes described as quadrant absolutism. It says, no, the left-hand side of the quadrant model, the subjective side, isn't meaningful because we can't do objective reproducible experiments of that on it, and therefore it's unreal. That's what Ken Wilber says is the pathology of modernity, which somehow expanded into the pathology of postmodernity, saying that no, only cultural, linguistic, relativistic things are absolute or like meaningful. And so the integral aperspectival says, let's bring together multiple different perspectives, not unduly privilege one versus the other. And so in the application of this, we go, okay, let's look at subjective and objective experiences, and let's consider multiple hypotheses. For example, the aliens cause the marks physically through medical procedures, or the marks are naturally occurring through physical mechanisms we know, aka the suction cover of the hot tub or the hot end of a hair dryer. But those are synchronistically meaningful because geometry in general is meaningful because it connects us with that world of forms, this internal world. It is a mathematical object if it is apprehended as such. And so we can say, hey, either it's synchronistically meaningful but naturally occurring, or that aliens cause the mark. I don't care in the experience because we're looking at all different aspects here. And the debunking of all of the crosshair marks or the red grid marks as physically, mechanically known is not actually meaningful as it seems if there is the presence of an intuition in the subjective or collective experience of that mark. That intuition in and of itself is worthy of study. Okay, so the next topic is the pre-post fallacy. Pre-post refers to pre-rational or post-rational ways of thinking. So this explains why we should consider subjective experiences of non-human intelligences, right? So to someone from a rational perspective, that is someone from an objective science perspective, they cannot distinguish between pre-rational and post-rational experiences, right? Schizophrenic delusions and hallucinations look the same to them as legitimate non-human intelligence communications. They both seem like hallucinations to someone who cannot comprehend post-rational ways of knowing. And therefore, we should actually consider these other experiences. Of course, we need to interpret them and set them in with context and things like that. But it suggests why we might consider these sort of fanciful tales of alien abduction or witchcraft. There are a notion of multiple bodies in integral theory. So these are subtle bodies. That's the physical body, the subtle body, the causal body. And so this notion or awareness is really expressed through the dream stigmata type hypothesis, meaning that NHIs have an interaction with us, and it's so impactful that the psyche psychosomatically imprints something on the body in response to that interaction. I say that this is the hypothesis to start with because that's what Dr. Sean Esborn-Hargens recommended I start with. Of course, there are other hypotheses when the experiencers report to us, hey, this is a thing that actually happened. I remember I had this encounter. This is the mark that results from it. Okay, let's use that data as a starting point for investigation. But in general, unless there's another reason to expect, we might say that these are psychosomatically created by real interactions with real but non-physical, non-human intelligences. And finally, we have a commitment to life practice with integral principles because it's a holistic. It includes subjective and objective and sort of holistically subjective, objective, individual, collective, right? And so there needs to be a practice that embodies the inquiry that supports any integral inquiry. And in this case, I say it is the geometric analysis of the body marks. So I talked about how body marks can be used as physical evidence for physical hypothesis and also non-physical hypotheses. So we can ground this into the integral education and theories that come forward from Motoyama, the founder of the institute I'm at, California Institute for Human Sciences. His work might inform us in several ways. So he presented a three-layer model of the world, the physical level, a layer above that, and even more subtle layer. And he generated a model of energy conversion. So he says interactions happen from the physical to the second layer or the third layer. In the second layer, there's typically small collectives of astral or spirit beings working together. And in the higher level, it's many of these collectives working together. This is particularly relevant to the alien abduction narrative, where an individual is taken by a small collective of individuals, where oftentimes one individual, like a tall gray, surrounded by multiple short grays, may interact directly with the experiencer and telepathically represent both the smaller collective, aka the tall gray is controlling the smaller gray to perform the procedures, and the tall gray in its interaction with the experiencer may telepathically represent the entire collective of grays. This is what some experiencers tell us about that, and it really corresponds very well with this three-layer model Motoyama put forward. He developed methods and a model to generate measurable hypotheses about the physical body as interactions occur at these different levels. Energy needs to shift down for us to even cognize about the experience, and therefore we may measure that in the connection between the physical and energetic bodies, often understood as chakras or meridians. So, in addition to that, grounding into, in addition to Motoyama's example, scholars have noted that there are many types of psycho-spiritual skin marks that have been interpreted as the effects of prayer, angel visitation, and other non-physical spiritual religious events. There are cases of placebo causing marks and removing marks, and so we really cannot make the conclusion that if there's an unexplained physical mark, that there is definitely going to be a physical cause. This is not supported in the literature because there are multiple precedents for psycho-spiritual or psychosomatic markings that produce very drastic marks like we are seeing with the scoop marks or puncture wounds. Okay, so body mark research then, an integrally based body mark research would then have to be seen as a field of integral exo studies. It's this sort of derivative or falls underneath this sort of larger metadisciplinary framework, an integral framework for research. And so Dr. Sean Esborn-Hargens developed this. He put forward this notion in a research paper under the Exo Studies Institute, and it has obviously informed the policies of the Integral Noetic Science Department, which he's directing here at CIHS. And so he applied this to study the actual ontological reality of UFOs or fairy encounters. And he says that we can likely study these ontological realities, that we're not stuck just talking about phenomena or the appearances of things, that we can actually know about the beingness of aliens or fairies or UFOs. Now, of course, this is a highly strange field of study, but we're able to do that. That's the hypothesis of his paper on exo studies. There's several principles here that may be directly applied to body mark research. And the first topic is doubleness. So this is essential to his presentation throughout the Exo Studies framework. Doubleness suggests that an event or an object may occupy multiple stations along an ontological spectrum. Ontology simply refers to the beingness of a thing. What is that thing? And an ontological spectrum says, okay, is it real like physical bodies on one end, or is it real but illusory or hallucinatory like fantasies, subjective fantasies on the other end, right? Where along these lines does this exist? And so many UFO researchers say, hey, there is a physical component, but there is a psychical component. And Carl Jung is a famous proponent of this, Jacques Vallée, and many other researchers. And so it explains how an event can be physically one thing and psychically another. It shows precedent. Now, the geometric body mark is a perfect example of doubleness because it is a mark on the body, but when we perform Euclidean constructive analysis to it, when we make a Euclidean construction, we actually apprehend a mathematical object and the physical mark at the same time. So those drawings of geometry on top of the marks are actually an experience of doubleness because it's a physical mark and a mathematical object. So it explains how some marks may be psychically meaningful, right? The experience of that square in the circle of dots and things like that from the suction cover is actually a geometrically potent image. And its presentation in life may be synchronistically caused, right? And many people say that these events come into their lives through the intervention of non-human intelligences like angels or guides or things like that, even though they're physically caused by known mechanisms, right? Another important principle associated with this is ontological indeterminacy. Like it's hard to tell where things are. They may actually exist in a sort of smear of along the spectrum rather than distinct places. The other principle that Dr. Esborn-Hargens really worked with in exo studies is a multidisciplinary integral aperspectival approach, meaning it's not unduly privileging one perspective, one discipline, one hypothesis. So he collected many different lists of types of non-human intelligences from multiple different disciplines, put them all together and established a sort of meta taxonomy of non-human intelligences and asked questions of them, like who are they, where are they from, and looked to these different disciplines and hypotheses for their answers, put them in a table, a matrix, and use that to help generate a taxonomy that we can use when we do research about the non-human intelligence intuitions associated with the body marks. Now, we can apply this to the body mark research, this example, by collecting together multiple marks, including those that have already been explained in conventional means, putting them together and collecting a lot of data around that, as well as multiple theories such as the witch's mark, such as reincarnation, such as alien abduction, and using that and just opening up the field of research to include many different marks and theories. So this inquiry, this presentation concludes with directions for future research. Now, the ruler and compass geometry is an integral practice, and I say a research method, or at least a part of research method. The congruence testing of a geometric construction and the photograph of the mark demonstrates doubleness of the physical mark and the psychical object, right? So now we're dealing with multiple different realms of experience, which is an integral practice in and of itself. And then the ruler and compass geometry is derived from an archetypal circle. It's any circle you draw with a compass, And the circle that you imagine when you see that, that is the circle of the world of forms or something. And so it relates the phenomena of body mark, the physical phenomena, with its archetypal circle, therefore relating it to a mandala, which is simply a circle, and that is an archetype of the self. This mandala then may be used as an object of meditation that is traditionally associated with psychical non-human intelligence contact, like Jungian active imagination or Tibetan mandala practice. We can also look to the example of Plato's doctrine of recollection, saying that when we apprehend these mathematical objects, we are recollecting this world of forms, and that experience, that recollection process is associated in Platonic doctrines with non-human intelligence interactions with the Socratic daemon he encountered during the Eleusinian mysteries. Socrates encountered during his time with the Eleusinian mysteries, right? So he interacted with a non-human intelligence, which was non-physical, that described this bridging of the physical world to the phenomenal world, to the noumenal world, right? So these are the methods we can use. The long-term goal of this, for me, is maybe an intuitive inquiry into the geometric intuition that is a co-participatory experience with marker UAP geometry experiencers. I want to run a study with people who have had marks on their body or have seen geometric pulsating UAPs or geometric formations. I want to interview them about their experience, then work with them to find a geometric construction or teach them how to make a geometric construction of their mark or UAP documentation, and engage in transpersonal meditation with them on that construction, during which time we might measure subtle bodies as a way to understand we are elucidating the connection between the physical and spiritual world, and it may actually be measured in conversion events from that world through the subtle body of the chakras and meridians and expressed into the physical body. And then finally, we would do interviews about the findings, put that together according to the research methodology of intuitive inquiry. However, the short-term research direction is necessary. It involves a literature review, which is presented in the paper associated with this presentation of body mark documentation and hypothesis. And it also involves a catalog of body mark documentation. So I'm focusing on publicly posted photos and stories from body mark experiencers who already intuitively associate the mark with non-human intelligences. There's dozens or hundreds of these posted on social media inquiring, does anybody have information about alien abduction marks? This could be an alien abduction mark. Why is this so geometric? How did this happen? Look at my story, a ghost touched me and now there's a triangle, etc. So collecting all that information into a database and doing so with publicly available data to avoid any ethical concerns in terms of working with this data. This whole project of the short-term literature review and catalog of body mark will support this longer inquiry with the experiencers and the study actually with them. The data that is collected in the catalog of body marks will support the AQAL analysis of this phenomena. So it'll ask the questions in these quadrants. And that concludes the presentation. Now I've got the references here that are used. I will publish the paper, link to the paper when I finish that, and you can get more of the references. And then I also want to show, let me see if I can show where you can get some more information about this experience. All right, great. So my website, D-SETI.org. There's my book, Missing Time Found. It's dseti.org/missing-time-found. This presents the hypothesis that alien abduction and NHI contact is dreamlike, and that our means of knowing is about them may be best modeled as shamanic dream work. So this explores that, goes through case studies. The case studies involve my regression hypnosis with missing time experiencers, as well as my geometric analysis of body marks and UAP documentation. The catalog for the body marks is actually a supplement to this book, because I realized that the body mark as physical evidence is the central issue to proving or disproving the alien abduction as a physicalized event, as a generalized physicalized event. The body mark experience, the body mark documentation is the only proof that we actually have right now, and maybe central to discovering the actual workings of alien abduction, let's say. Now, I'm not denying that abduction and physicalized abduction happen, but I'm saying that that may not be the primary precedent for more generalized phenomena of non-human intelligence or even body marking. I actually say that the physicalized alien abduction phenomena is a subclass and perhaps a very limited subclass of this phenomenon. So on the website as well, I have a number of different publications. There's a lot of information, but I wanted to point out that the research here, I do have an analysis database going on that presents a number of different geometric analysis of both UAP and body marks. And that if you have a body mark and you've already reached out publicly on the internet to other places or are willing to kind of anonymously participate or share your photo and some data with me, I would love to work with your body mark and produce a Euclidean constructive analysis of that. The best way to do that is to request a geometric analysis here, and that's really just by learning a little bit about what I'm doing and sending me some information and photos about that. So without too much more, I will say thank you for going on this journey with me. I am also, by the way, a moderator of the Red Grid Mark Phenomena Researchers and Experiencers Facebook group. So you do have regular red grid patterns and things like that. You can connect with a community there. And that's one of the ways I offer the geometric analysis is people post and I respond back there. So if you want to help with this, I mean, this is a really big project. I am going to put together a sort of field guide, but absolutely need support in this. This includes a research grant to actually complete this work in a timely manner. That would be immensely helpful, as well as, scouring the internet and things like that, or that would be helpful too. So if this really inspires you, if you have some questions about this project, if you'd like to work with me, please do reach out. The best way to do so is via email at daniel@dseti.org. Now, if I don't get back to you, you can literally just schedule time with me at a chat via my website. You just schedule time. That's a really good way to do that. If I have availability, it will be on that Calendly link, and that will, because I have kids, I'm busy sometimes, so it's hard for me to respond to all the emails, but if I see something in my calendar, I will show up for it. So that's just a good way to do that. So thank you again for being here, and please do stay in touch if this has inspired you.